Harambe's dead. Harambe's dead, goddammit. But you know what's not dead? Warhammer 40,000. And we here at the Large Blast podcast remember Harambe with this, the 40K Tyrannid Zoo episode of the Large Blast podcast. I'm your host, Stoney, and I'm joined, as always, by the hairless gibbon that is Welshie.
Jacaros are our true masters.
And the misunderstood baboon that is Matt.
Destroy the impure.
And we like to get things kicked off with a little something we call Hobbies Goings On, where we take a little look at some of the goings on that's been happening in the post live. And Welshie, you weren't here last time, so do you want to kick us off? Tell us what's been going on in your Hobbies Goings On.
Yeah, sure. I had a little holiday. I managed to go to an abroad land. I managed to get out of Albion and head somewhere else. So I've had a little break, but I've come home pretty revitalized and cracked on with my Black Templars. But I got a little bit angry last night. I've had a bit of anger. I don't know how you feel about these guys, but molded shoulder pads, they're just a pain in the arse. They look better, but they take so much longer to paint. I just want a flat, smooth surface to chuck a transfer on, but now I'm painting 20 individual Black Templar crosses. It's mad.
Oh, right. What, so shoulder pads that have a bit of something sticking out or something like that? I mean,
like the emblem is now embossed on all of these new sculpts, and it's just a pain. I know it looks better when heavy metal painters paint it, but it just takes forever. I just want to put a shoulder pad on. I've got 20 of these guys to do, and they've got one on each arm because the Black Templars, they've got to have their symbol on each shoulder.
Well, it seems a bit like, is there maybe a bit of a trade-off with these Black Templar models? Because I've seen some of them that have got like quite clean, like they don't seem to have the Aquila on the chest and stuff like that. So maybe they've got rid of a bit of detail elsewhere and stuck it on the shoulder pads.
I'm afraid only on the Emperor's Champion. Everyone else has just got more detail than most.
Oh,
basically.
Shit.
Yeah, the Emperor's Champion, he's nice and clean, he's proper. He's only there for the fight and to cleanse. He doesn't need any logos. He's a no logo kind of guy, but everyone else is full logo. So it's going to take a while, but they are beautiful. And when you finish them, they look great. It's just a pain in the ass.
I know what you mean. I could never understand though, like in terms of real world armor, like what all that shit would be made from. What's the point? Yeah, why wouldn't you just paint on the symbols?
Yeah.
It's just it's just silly.
But I do love the models, and I spent a long time painting loincloths, and I really enjoyed that. So maybe some people don't like the loincloths but love the embossed shoulder pads. Who am I to say? But that's what I've been up to.
Roundabouts, Welshie.
Yeah, exactly.
What about you, Matt? What have you been up to?
I've finished 2 Black Templars.
Okay,
and that's it.
So these are guys that you've been painting, that sort of generic Marines that you've painted as Black Templars. Still not.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Don't stray into that box set, Matt.
No,
you've promised us.
Not going to do it. It's not happening.
Well, I've been having to think about my Gene Stealer cult army a bit more, with a bit more sincerity, and one of the things that I was searching through some of my bits box. I don't know if you remember last week, Matt, I was telling you about my bag full of sprues that I'd left at my workshop and had become full of spiders. So I've tackled the beasts. I have slain the dragon that holding these 8-legged dragons holding my sprues at bay. And I've got some of the ones that I wanted. And one of the things that I found was I had, because I knew that I wanted to use some of the Delac sprue, because that's a really cool one, and it's got like these really cool coats on and stuff. And Welshie, I don't know if you heard last week, but I was saying that I want my guys not to be like miners, but to be more kind of like a bit more technologically advanced, something to. I wanted to use the Delac coats for something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
But I found that I had a Gaunt Summoner sprue, still had the head on.
Yeah.
Which I don't know where I acquired that from, but like he's got those kind of like big bunny ear horns on, right? Yeah. But if you cut those off, you've actually got a pretty slick kind of like eyeless, weird fish head type thing.
Oh, cool.
So I've what I did was I cut that off and sort of smoothed it out and made a cast of one like that with its because it's got its mouth open on the original pose, and then I cut the mouth off and resculpted one with a closed mouth and one with like a tongue out. So I had a few head variations, but all basically sculpted on the top half of the Gaunt Summoner head, and cast a few different ones of those. So I'm thinking that for the first part of my Tyranid army will be kind of like the lap gang of bodies with kind of like smoothed off gaunt summoner head. Like imagine the gaunt summoner wearing like a swimming cap.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like these kind of like weird, kind of like he's changing type sort of weird beasties, but hidden under these kind of big trench coat type things.
Yeah, you could push that really far with kind of mutations and stuff, and have some lore that they're all like. We'll get onto this possibly a bit later, but the Umgal gene stealers, the original gene stealers, they were basically shapeshifters. So you could have this whole kind of weird lore behind having slightly odd looking gene stealer cult.
Yeah. I'm not really sure what
invested.
the lore is, other than they're going to be some kind of like shady corporation where behind them, but they're experimenting with gene stealer bits behind closed doors or something.
That's
like
a good
that.
idea.
Nice. And obviously that's where the limo is going to come quite heavily into it.
Yeah.
So
hang on a minute. You're going to make a limo?
Nani?
That's what. Yeah, that's what Stone's.
I'm going to make a fucking limo. So yeah, I've got the milliput here, Welshie. I've got 3 packets of milliput. I'm thinking about what to do with it.
Didn't see it.
I'm going to probably cut out some bits of cardboard and then cover them with milliput to like make a kind of a frame, and then limo it up.
Nice.
Sounds
good. I'm excited to see where you go with these. A few rules to preview in the news for the Gene Stealer cults as well. It looks like the Codex is going to be pretty good fun.
Oh, cool. Well, let's find out about that in the news.
It's the news. Wow. It's the chuffing news.
Have you heard 6s are now 4s?
It's the news.
Gene Stealer limo's back.
News.
So are you tempted to win everything that Games Workshop has released this year? Well, all you have to do is spend a tenner at Games Workshop, would you believe it? And you get thrown into a pool to potentially win, well, fucking loads of stuff. What's going on here?
Well, it's madness. And I saw it and I thought I couldn't handle it. I consider myself, I've got quite a big pile of shame, not a massive one, and I love Warhammer, but could you guys really deal with every single release over a year? Every single model we've seen in the past year delivered to your house? What would you do?
Sell it.
Just
sell it away.
Be a lot of go on eBay.
Straight away. No, would you try and make any of it?
Well, yeah. I can't sit here and be like I would be ungrateful if I suddenly got every piece of I'd be like, okay, there's definitely going to be some things I'm keeping in there. For instance, I see is that the Gene Stealer cult guys in there that we're looking at?
Yeah, that's a slightly different competition of the many competitions where Warhammer Plus subscribers can win a much more manageable, like 2,000 point army in the post. So there's two things going on, and I think I'd take that rather than just the hassle of trying to sell a year's worth of Warhammer on eBay.
Yeah, well, you'd be selling Age of Sigmar stuff,
but not all of it. Maybe I'd just ruin it. Like, imagine you had access to all of that, all of those kits where we're like, could use one arm from that in a 40K model, but it costs £90 to buy. Maybe
every base you had would be like piled high with dead bodies and things like that, just because you needed to wade your way through some of the sprues.
Yeah, the whole battle force as scenery on one model.
Legions at my feet.
Well, I just wondered what your guys' take was on that, because I saw it and thought, blimey, that's mental.
I mean, fair enough.
I kind of
they're
don't want to win.
Making money out of Warhammer Plus, whatever, if they could afford to just give away. Because the good thing is it's like, it's a tenner as well. So you've got to think like, I mean, we're saying we're jaded, we're horrible old jaded men with big piles of plastic that we shamefully look at. But you're some young kid who's like, I'll spend my last tenner on something, and then you win all of this.
Yeah, can you imagine that?
That's like the golden ticket. This is like being invited to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, except they send it to you.
Imagine Imagine you're at that point. You've got like 1,500 points, and you've gone and you spent a tenner just to kind of finalize your last models, to finalize your 2,000 point army as a 14-year-old, and suddenly
I just need 2 pots of null oil, please, and then like boom, all of this lands on your doorstep.
They did the painting one last month, didn't they, where you won every paint?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be good.
Well, I'd much prefer that. I'd love
that. Yeah.
I mean, I've got most of them by now, but some of them. So I don't know. Madness.
Well, if you ever thought about why not get yourself a gift this Christmas by spending a tenner on Warhammer and seeing if you get entered to this Warhammer lottery? So new Gene Stealer cult rules are finally coming out. we know they've been an underpowered, bit unloved army for a little while. But Welshie, what could you tell us about some of these?
Well, these are the previews. The Codex is out. Well, I think it's one of the ones that got pushed. So early next year. It was going to be out before Christmas, but COVID has broken the world. So it's going to be early next year. So they previewed some of them. And these guys they previewed, and they also previewed the Custodes stuff. And there's some real game mechanic changing stuff in here. The simplest stuff, and now you've played a few games with your new army, Stoney, your Gene Stealer cults, you'll appreciate the first one. The Acolyte hybrids are up to toughness 4 from toughness 3. So that's a big change for your kind of basic model. And the cult icons that used to just kind of buff the unit a little bit can bring back D3 dead models a turn. So just that by itself is great on a 20-man squad. You know, that's going to really aid longevity. But what's really interesting about the rules they've previewed is this completely new game mechanic that encourages you to do like a pincer maneuver around a unit. So the way that this works is called crossfire. If you score 5 damage or 5 hits on a unit, they get a token that's called, gives them crossfire. So you kind of like pinned the enemy unit. And if you manage to pop up a unit behind them, so your line of sight in the unit that pops up behind has line to another of your units, you get +1 to hit and +1 to wound.
Okay.
Now that's difficult to explain, but a completely different way of playing. The geographical position of your units on the board will change their effectiveness, and that is completely new.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah.
I think, it's really going to change everything, especially with the amount of units that can deep strike. And it could be really, really nasty stuff here. +1 to hit and +1 to wound on pretty much anything on the board. If you can get behind enemy lines is dirty. So, lots of good stuff. And then strats that kind of play on those crossfire tokens that you're giving. But yeah, pretty mad. From 5 auto guns hitting, you're essentially getting +1 to hit and possibly +1 to wound across your whole army. So
it's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty, does that work as similar to kind of like marker lights for the Tau? Is that sort of like...
Yeah, well, it's kind of, I guess so. Tau, I guess, were the first kind of mechanic to have that, where you build up tokens on a unit, but they didn't require any kind of positioning. You just fire your marker lights first, and then you can shoot units that have got marker lights on them. Whereas this actually relies upon you getting around the back of units and kind of straddling things, like I say, in a pincer maneuver. And yeah, it's just, I think it's really fun and really thematic, and possibly a future full rules change. You know, it's kind of when they bring out rules like this, you think, 10th edition, maybe every army will have something that's a bit like this.
Okay.
One of those real game-changing mechanics, you know, that they kind of try out in one codex and then suddenly it's army-wide.
Yeah, it's very much like historical wargaming.
Yes,
where you do have to position you have to think ahead of where you position your units, and you can benefit from that if you plan ahead correctly. So that's good. It's a good tactical option within the game. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and especially it's nice that because obviously Gene Stealer Cult, they've got all this kind of crazy movement and popping up and deep striking and stuff. It's nice to make that count for a little bit more than just you popped up here. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fun. It's not overly complicated, but it is thematic, and it should really boost the army. So I think that's a great preview there. Good time to start a Gene Stealer Cult army, Stoney.
So listeners at home, I'm looking here at 4 advent calendar previews that have been released by Games Workshop. So this is basically your rumor engine stuff, and this is clearly hinting at some sort of new schwanky elder on the horizon. So if that's something you're interested in, then maybe this is going to pan into something good.
Oh yeah.
I mean, what is this? What do you guys think? Matt, you just said that you thought like we'd predicted this. So what do you think this is?
We'd spoken about this a long time ago, because when we discussed about the Age of Sigmar range and the stuff that they've done with some of the Age of Sigmar ranges, we kind of said like, you could do that to Tau and Eldar. You could come out with some crazy stuff, and they're ranges that are really old, especially the Eldar range. And I think it could be a full-on Age of Sigmar version of the Eldar, the whole range reborn in it would be amazing for 40k if they did do that, and I really hope they do. And I think it could be. Darren Latham's Instagram, he's been painting Eldar for ages, and I reckon it might be because he's been the designer on them, because he's always loved Eldar. Yeah, I think all the stars are lining up. Like 40k needs to have some of that Age of Sigmar design element in it, and I think the Xenos ranges allow them to do that. So I'm quite excited about this, actually.
I am.
Not going to get them, but
if you listened to us talk about Eldar before, you'll know from our Eldar special that we have a vastly inadequate knowledge about the Eldar, and don't really like them and find them pretty dull and boring. But I am excited, just from a model perspective, to see what GW will do if this is indeed a complete reboot of the Eldar range.
Yeah, I quite like the Eldar in general. I think we've talked about like my love of the Dark Eldar, so I'm kind of excited to see where they're going to go with this. Yeah, I mean, if this is a Eldar reboot, then yeah, I definitely want to see that. You guys have heard me talk about how I think the Tau need it, so yeah, definitely the Eldar need it. So yeah, bring it on. If you play Custodes at home, get ready to win a lot of fucking games, because they've got some new rules. There's, some new rules. She has pulled up a dictionary's worth of new rules on the screen here. They look badass. Sounds like you're going to be, very OP at the current meta.
As if they weren't.
Yeah. So if you are a Custodes listener, Duck, if you're listening, I'm sorry, as I'm about to butcher the new Custodes previews, but God, there's a lot of words. As two people on the podcast who struggle with reading lots of words, this must be horrifically daunting and put you off buying any Custodes models. But it's just getting silly how some codexes are going. Matt, you wouldn't have enough paper printed in your file to run these guys. It's madness. I'll try my best to sum it up succinctly. You pick 3 stances at the start of the game that you'll go through, and stances give you points. So you pick the order of 3 stances, but the order comes in 2 parts. So you could do stance part 1, part 2, then stance 1, part 1, and then stance 2, part 1, and stance 2, part 2, etc. But if that kind of progression through various stances and fighting styles and buffs wasn't enough, you could also pick one of the chapters of Custodes, which allows you to kind of mix and match / prolong your progression through these stances and buffs. And it's a hell of a lot of words behind each one, and it's very, very confusing. I think you will literally need a flowchart to get your head around these rules.
In a way, though, that might be quite interesting, because they're an army that's a go-to army for competitive players or players in tournaments. Mm-hmm. Maybe this will make them less appealing in tournaments.
Well, you say that, Matt. The paperwork might make them less appealing, but when you look at these rules, some of these rules are, I mean, I think they're seriously game-breaking here. The Dakatarai one, where when an enemy unit piles in or consolidates, it essentially only gets to pile in 1 inch. So if you do a charge where you only make it where a couple of your models get to engagement range, like most people do, you only just make a charge, and then you pile in your 3 inches, and that gives you enough to get enough models into fighting to make it worthwhile. No, not against the Custodes, only 1 inch movement. So half of your unit might not even make it in anymore, just trying to fight them. That's madness.
So how do these stances work? Do you have to do you get 1 a turn, or I mean, what so happens?
You pick the order that they're gonna go in, essentially.
Oh, so you go turn 1, these ones are going to
and then when it gets to that turn, it's quite similar to what you do with Necrons as well. You pick the order, and that's the order you get in Necrons. So there's 6 in Necrons, and you just pick, this is turn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
But with these, each one is then broken down into 2 parts, and then you have to pick which part you want to use and whether you want to progress to the next stance. And there are ways of shuffling it all round. So it's a real, I think this, with a lot of rules now, there's real trust you've got to have in your opponent, especially in a competitive play, because there's no way you can learn rules like this for armies that aren't your own.
No.
So there is a real sense of you do just have to trust in the person you're playing is playing it right, which, you know, is fine when you're playing with mates, but it's difficult if you don't know what you're doing at all with it. Another of the stances, which I think is massively game breaking, just a simple roll off to prevent you from falling back. So if you manage to actually get into combat with them, you have a roll and want to fall back so you can actually shoot a unit. It's just a roll off. And if you lose the roll off, you can't fall back, so you can't shoot them. Army wide. It's mad. The same thing there, if you pick the other one within that option, no hit rolls can be re-rolled against them. So all of your units that you're relying on to get in and do some damage, suddenly, no, can't re-roll anything. So it's going to be really interesting to see where these go. Maybe I'm losing my mind over not very much, but they could become super duper powerful. They're already not doing badly at tournaments. So,
but it's like we were saying the other day, before even these rules were previewed, they are the custodes. The custodian
they
guard
should be the best.
Yeah. It's
but
just
God, I wouldn't know how to beat them.
No. How do you balance that in a competitive tournament?
I mean, that's it. That's the oldest question in the book, isn't it? The law and the game kind of like meeting up together. And if it's like, you know, you can't just be like, oh, these guys are the best ones in the universe, because then it's like everybody just buys the best ones in the universe, and you know, and then what do you know? Yeah,
it's kind of mad. It's kind of mad, but we'll see. I mean, I think the way to get around it is if you understand these and you're playing against them, you know that they can only use something in a certain turn, and you'd know that weakness. But it's so difficult to understand, I reckon, if you're playing it, let alone if you're playing against it, that could be really difficult. So cool that Custodes are getting new rules. Cool that it is in thematics with them being the best going. But God, I'm not looking forward to fighting them, that's for sure.
Rolling in my 6-4.
In the year 40,000, all mosquitoes get sent back in time by Trazin the Infinite because they're kind of annoying. Present-day scientists extracted DNA from these mosquitoes and found tyrannid blood, and were able to clone them and open a theme park for the viewing public. So, Large Blast podcast listeners, we invite you to join us now as we explore Tyrannic Park.
Oh, I hate queuing. I'm really bored. I hate queuing.
I'm not sure you're tall enough to ride any of the rides, Matt.
Oh, don't fear, guys. I've been doing some sweet Tyrannid research, so I've got a little quiz we can play while we're queuing, trying to get into the Tyrannic Park.
All right, well, let's have
some kind of excitement. Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
Do that again. Oh, don't fear. Seeing as we're waiting here, guys, I've done some sweet Tyrannid research to quiz us whilst we're waiting in this queue. Pass the time, you know.
Oh, shit! That's amazing! Fuck!
Should we just do this fucking quiz?
There's a quiz? What?
I spent all fucking day making this PowerPoint, this quiz. So, guys, first question to test your Tyrannid knowledge before we get into the park then. Which edition were the Tyrannids first described in?
Second.
Tyrannids, I think it's second edition, if it's the Tyrannids as we know them kind of thing.
Matt, what are you going for?
I said second.
Both going second. It was the first edition. They were first described in Rogue Trader, but not really elaborated upon until a bit later. And the Gene Stealers, when they were developed in Space Hulk, weren't really part of Tyrannid range. They kind of came in a little bit later, it turns out. Where does the name Tyrannid come from? Do you know?
The planet. Is it Tyrannid Prime?
Oh, Stoney, have you got an answer?
I mean, Tyrannid Prime does sound right, but what comes first, the Tyrannid Prime or the Tyrannid? You know, that's so. I don't know. Is it like a plant or like a cross between a tyrant and a Triffid?
Oh, I like that idea. It should be a cross between a tyrant and a Triffid. But Matt,
they are like
you
Triffids, aren't they?
I
They're
suppose
biological.
they like
Yeah, maybe
come
that's
down and replace
where
people. Are they?
they come from.
Yeah, maybe. But you're right, Matt. It is a little bit more boring than that. It is Tyran Primus is the first recorded incidents of the Tyranids appearing, and that's where they get their name. On that battle, basically everybody was killed. And this is the last surviving. I'm going to read you out the last surviving message that was found on that planet.
We cannot live through this. Mankind cannot live through this. In a single day, they have covered this planet with a flood of living blades and needle-fanged mouths. Kill one, and 10 take its place. If they are truly without number, then our race is doomed to a violent death before every shred of our civilization is scoured away by a force more voracious than the fires of hell themselves.
That was Magos Varnak. That was his last words.
Ye of little faith.
Yeah. So that was the first encounter of the Tyranids.
That's quite poetic for your last words. I think he'd written that days before.
Especially for an Admech Magos as well. You don't think of them as being particularly poetic, but I thought that was quite nice. Do you guys know the name of the Inquisitor that got that message? He is the kind of lead Inquisitor against the Tyranids.
I don't think I do.
No.
Inquisitor Cryptman.
Cryptman.
Inquisitor Cryptman. Spooky Cryptman.
There you go.
So he is the Inquisitor in the Order Xenos that's basically been fighting them for a long time. We'll come back to him in a minute.
Not doing a good job.
Not great. What is the blank darkness felt by Imperial Psychers called as a hive fleet approaches?
Oh, is it like the null?
Is it the void?
The null void?
Null void.
Not
quite.
Oh, I don't know.
It's
The
close.
oblivion.
Sometimes you hear the Gene Stealer cults refer to it as a void, but the shadow in the warp.
Oh, yeah.
That's
right.
what it's referred to. And everything goes dark. And apparently it's so dark that ships can't even translate out of the warp because of it. So it's really difficult to reinforce planets where there's a big Tyranid invasion. Next question. Where do the Tyranids come from?
Another galaxy.
Yeah, I don't think they know, do they? They just come from another place. There's like they're just sort of tendrils.
Well, they're coming from like
coming
deep
into-
space, aren't they?
Yeah.
You're both correct there. Yeah, completely separate galaxy, which is why they appear at random all over the place, because they come like the galactic planes, like a flying saucer, right? So they come in from the edges, but also like up and down into the center. So that's the kind of tendrils. But you're right, nobody knows what they're running from or why they're coming. But we do think we might know what's drawing them towards the galaxy. Do you know what's drawing them in?
The Emperor.
Anything specifically about the Emperor?
The psychic beacon that is the Astronomicon.
That is it. Like moths to the flame, the insects are literally just flying towards Terra, drawn in by the light. Which chapter was the first to officially battle the Tyranids? And can you name the battle? Oh, yes.
Yeah, Ultramarines.
And can you name the battle?
The Battle of the something beginning with an F, or it was a box set, I'm sure. Black.
It was a box set, you're right.
Black
shit.
Black
Had
Rage.
a big Carnifex. It was when the box sets were still square.
Black. Fuck.
I think you're thinking of Black Reach.
No,
But
that's what
it
I'm
was
thinking
the
about.
Battle for Macragge box set.
That's right, yeah.
Battle for Macragge box set.
Only
Did
the
they not have,
fucking homeworld of the Ultramarines.
And they could have had an opportunity to fight them before if they'd gone and helped the squats out. Because apparently that was what they called upon the. Oh no, the Ultramarines. I don't know. I can't remember. The squats have got something to do with it, and then not.
They got
getting
wiped out. Yeah. What?
Yeah.
What? Who? How long have the Nids been in the galaxy? There's three answers you can give for this.
Well, forever.
Can you give me a date? Okay, you're going forever.
Well, or it's the M38.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Stoney.
Well, it's a tough one. I mean, you said there's three answers to this one.
Yeah,
right,
there's an
Welshie?
official, an unofficial, and then a rumor.
Okay. Well, I'll go with answer number 2 then.
You're going with an unofficial
one.
date. Yeah. We've got officially M41. They're actually pretty new according to like the current canon lore and stuff. They haven't been around in the galaxy for that long. Unofficially M35. because there's lots of books that kind of mention things that are a bit like tyranids, including the like spider things on murder and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then even more unofficially, apparently there's a Cassius Kane book where they like dig a really deep hole and there's some frozen tyranids in it that suggests they were around like from the before the Horus Heresy, kind of infiltrating the galaxy, which is quite interesting.
I like dinosaurs mutated. That's what happened to the dinosaurs. They all got on a spaceship, jumped off out to another planet or whatever, became tyranids, and flew back again. They're like, we're going to go back home. Who's this bastard sat around on a big pile of bones on the dino capital?
Perhaps a Zote came and got them and took them off. Yeah. Okay, so we've heard about the Ultramarines and Macragge, but there's another chapter that's had a vast history with the Tyranids.
Blood Angels.
So correct than the Blood Angels there. But what was the name of their home world that was almost destroyed? And who actually saved them from destruction?
Baal.
Baal is the home world. Do you know who
indirectly
saved them?
Was it not Gilliman?
Matt's going Gilliman. Stoney?
I think say indirectly saved them, so that makes me think it's going to be like some chaos guy or something.
Eldar or something.
I delve deeper into that.
What about maybe it's orcs, because orcs like fighting Tyranids. Maybe
was it
Gazgul.
Fabius Bile?
I'm gonna say Gazgul just to throw in the wild card.
You were on the right lines to start with. It wasn't actually Gilliman. Gilliman comes in at the end and like mops up, but the Great Rift opens and Kabanda, the like bloodthirster of bloodthirsters, comes out.
And they have a massive fight.
He's really pissed off that the Blood Angels are almost beaten. So they just go full Khorne Berserker rage on the Tyranids and basically wipe the Tyranids out. So without the Great Rift opening and the arrival of the Bloodthirster, they probably would have been destroyed, the Blood Angels there. And then Gilliman comes a bit later and mops up the rest of the mess. So why do the Tyranids need a narval to get places?
A what?
A narval. 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 Now, no pressure, but my long-suffering girlfriend got this question right earlier.
Why do they need a what? Why do they need a narval?
Something called a narval.
For what?
The key here is to get places.
I recently bought a second-hand Ford Narval, and it's not let me down yet. So I'm pretty sure that might be the way.
Well, you're close. You're close, because you do need to get into a narval, but they are some kind of beast that can
Is it like a dropship?
It can sense gravitational waves, and it's how they approach and beat faster than light travel, because they can't go through the warp like everything else, and they don't have a webway like the Eldar. So their speed comes from like gravity warping interstellar style thing called a narval, which basically just makes me think of a narwhal, and they're all just going around in big unicorn seals. But yeah, that's how they move so quickly, apparently. Which of these rare Tyranid myths is not real? Is it A, the Dominatrix, B, the Doom of Malantai, C, the Scourge of Tyran, or D, the Parasite of Mortrex?
D.
I think it's the Parasite of Mortrex.
And you went, Matt, with B, Doom of Malantai?
No, I went with D.
You both gone the Parasite of Mortrex. Well, that is real. The only one that's fake there is the Scourge of Tyran, and we'll hear more about the rest later. Okay, last question then. We talked about Inquisitor Cryptman, but why was he stripped of his title under the Carta Extremis? No longer an Inquisitor, no longer allowed to be one. So you guys know.
He kept letting Tyranids through.
He's the expert on Tyranids, and he's kind of fucked up, yeah.
You start worshipping them.
He hasn't started worshipping them, but they
found a Tyranid with lipstick on in his lab. Like, they caught him coming in. He's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" He's just like practicing kissing with a Tyranid.
Yeah, he's into some he started on the kind of hentai tentacle porn, and it just took it one step further.
Isn't that a thing? A Gene Stealer kiss?
Well, you can get kissed by a Gene Stealer.
I think that's another D-Rock song.
That's it. Yeah.
Stealer's kiss. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Stealer's kiss. Yeah.
So your official answer there is that he was caught banging tentacled Gene Stealers whilst listening to D-Rock.
Well, if D-Rock stand for anything, it is they fill in the blank of the sexiness in the 40K universe. So I've got to believe him.
Okay. It wasn't quite that. What he actually did was wasn't that bad, to be honest. He just declared exterminatus on more than 20 worlds. He basically did a kind of scorched earth policy and would let the Tyranids invade a planet until they'd basically killed everything. And then before they could harvest the biomass, he'd exterminatus the planet, and did this multiple times and killed billions of people. So he was stripped. Even for the Inquisition, that was too much. And his most latest thing is to divert the Tyranids into the Orcs, thinking it would slow down the Tyranids.
He's done that.
Yeah, right. That's him. Yeah, so thinking that it'd slow down the Tyranids and give the Imperium a chance to fight back. But in fact, the Tyranids are feeding on the Orcs, and the Orcs are feeding on the Tyranids, and the Orcs are getting the Orcs are just flocking in for a good fight from all over the galaxy, and the Tyranids are just eating more and more Orcs, and the armies are both growing and growing. So he's not done well, old Inquisitor Cryptman.
Fucked it again, Cryptman.
Right, we're almost at the front of the queue, guys.
Hey, can't wait to get on the ride.
Oh, I think that might be the old patented Large Blast podcast emergency phone going. Let me just pick it up and see what's going on. Hello, Stoney from the Large Blast podcast. Who am I speaking to?
Hello, Stoney. It's Cryptman here. You know, used to be Inquisitor Cryptman. Have you heard of me?
I take it you're looking for some work. Well, I don't got nothing for you, I'm afraid, Cryptman.
No, not work. Work. You'll work for me, goddammit. This is your mission, should you wish to continue breathing the rancid air of this galaxy to investigate a site of great concern. Are you up for it?
All right,
yes.
Keep your hair on, Cryptman. We'll see what's up.
Well, we've got reports of some kind of xenos zoo operating in the area. You wouldn't know anything about it, would you?
Yeah, we got tickets. We're in the line now. You should come down. Looks good.
Oh, well, I bought these yesterday. I guess I'll give them to somebody else. Anyway, it goes by the name of Tyrannic Park. Could have given you VIP tickets, but I guess what we'll have to do. Get in, get intel, and report back your findings. I want to know if there's something fishy about that place.
All right, guys. Well, you heard the man. Let's get into this park and find out if there's anything fishy going on in this Tyrannid park. Surely not.
Well, we've got our orders, guys. So here's the map. Where's anywhere take your fancy? There's Psycho Beasts, digestive gardens, sky zones, carnifex feeding, petting zoos, tunnels of Jormungandr, the horror house. Where do you want to go first?
Stoney, let's go to the digestive gardens.
Okay, Matt. Digestive gardens it is. Let's go.
Stoney. Look, that one's got a massive penis on its back.
They've all got massive penises on their backs, Matt. This is the Tyrannid Park. But this one does in particular have a big penis on its back. What's it called? A pyrovore. Okay, Welsh, why don't you tell us a little bit about the pyrovore? People at home, it's the kind of the weird guy with a penis cannon on his back. He shoots spores around, am I right?
Yeah, so he's kind of like the flamer guy from the Tyranids. And he's part of the digestive organisms. So he's here in the digestive gardens bit of the zoo with the Haruspecs and a cool old model from Forge World, the digestion pool. But all of these guys are kind of end organisms. So when the Tyranids invade a place, they send in the kind of vanguard organisms, which you might see a bit later. And then they send in the big artillery, and then they kind of send in the clear up team. And these guys are all involved in just mushing everything up. The pyrovores kind of leak acid, and if you slice one up, it just kind of bursts acid and melts everything around it. So they kind of just involved in that digestive process, like the Haruspecs. I mean, I don't have one of these. Have you guys seen this model before? The Haruspecs?
Yeah, it's quite big, isn't it?
I've seen it.
Tentacle. It is like a weird hentai thing.
Has it got a head? Has it got a head? Doesn't? Its head is just above it. Yeah.
So the law for these guys is that they just keep eating. They just eat people, and then when they're full, they go and throw up in a digestion pool. So they're a bad guest at a house party.
It's like a roll on, roll off ferry.
Yeah, that's it. Except you roll back out. Yeah, you roll back out the same way. It might not even have an arsehole. Maybe it just eats and throws up. But it throws up into these digestion pools, which are really old models. Have you seen these before that have got kind of spikes out the ground with a kind of jacuzzi of goo in the middle?
Yeah, I
You know,
remember.
I'm
I
not
remember
sure.
this.
Is this an official Games Workshop model? This digestion
Forge
pool? Is it a
World.
Forge World?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've definitely seen. I'm not sure that I've seen anything from Forge World or Games Workshop, but I've seen loads of third party, you know, kind of knockoffs of Tyranid scenery and stuff that have
Yeah.
similar things to this. So
Yeah.
but yeah, so it's good to see the original, I guess.
Yeah. And it all feeds into, like I say, when the Tyranids have got and mushed everything up, it goes very War of the Worldsy, and these big tubes start growing up from the ground from these digesting pools and connect to the hive fleet and suck up all of the goo and all of the juice and all of the harrispecs throw up back up as biomass into the hive fleet ships.
All right, that's interesting, because I remember always wondering what the hell these things were for. Like, I was always confused by, like, you're told that the Tyranids land on a planet and consume everything. So why were they like growing huge plant things? But I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
The reasoning behind that makes sense now.
Yeah, these things come up the ground, and a lot of the organisms that tunnel that we might see to chat about later, they kind of put the spores for these things out, and they just start growing from the ground. They start growing from the sea and suck up all of that juicy biomass for the Tyranids to grow more beasts and move on.
Well, it's cool. It's the total devastation of a planet and kind of skyscraper tool tubes just for some tentacle to come and lap up. Is, you know, it's all very, very cool.
It's great. I think, like you say, these old Forgeron models, I'd love to see some, you know, everything gets a bit of scenery now, to see something good like this for the Tyranids.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I've always thought that. I think that's one of the things that I was so disappointed about with the Garden of Nurgle kit when they brought that out. They should have done some really cool, crazy, big sloppy trees or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and that's what they're missing, some of this kind of really cool, organic, slippity, sloppity scenery.
Yeah, exactly. And that whole like wasteland of a planet, there's loads of stuff in the Imperial history books that people go to try and study a Tyranid invasion. By the time they get there, it's just rock, so no one really knows what's going on or what happens after everybody's dead. So it's all a bit, you know, you can kind of make it up as you go along, which is quite cool. I like that aspect. So you guys done in the digestive gardens? Should we check the map out again?
Yeah.
Let's go back and see what other lands are in Tyrannic Park we can go to. So Matt, where do you think we should go? We've got the Psycho Beasts section, we've got Sky Zone, Horror House, the Carnivex feeding show, and the petting zoo. Oh, don't forget the tunnels of Jormungandr.
No, Stoney, I think we should go cuddle up with some lovely cute little bunnies. Let's go to the petting zoo.
Petting zoo? Let's go to the petting zoo. Let's clear our palate after that digestive pool area.
Well, here we are in the petting zoo. First up is these little cute buggers, the rippers, the smallest animals they've got here in the petting zoo. Do you guys think about taking a couple of these guys home? I don't think so.
I'm not taking one of these home.
They eat quite a lot of food as well.
These are like the basic Tyranid, aren't they?
Yeah, so these are like the base form. The rippers are the little things that you get. You know, there's like 4 or 5 on one base. They're the swarms, the nurglings of the Tyranids. And these guys,
bursters.
Well, that's a good point, Stoney, because there is actually, do you remember in the quiz when we were in the queue, we talked about the parasite of Mortrex?
Oh, yeah.
The parasite of Mortrex was a real kind of mythological Tyranid that took out an entire Astra Militarum defensive fortress, because what it was doing was flying along the walls and injecting guardsmen with ripper babies, and in total alien rip-off. But in like 10 seconds, they mature and chest burst out. So the whole fortress was just turned into rippers, because they just ripped everything to shreds. And that's what they kind of do. They're one of the digestion organisms as well, really, that they just, like, millions of these are just dropped from the sky and just completely munch everything in their path into juice and goo. But
they're also
really
very helpful for holding objectives.
Yeah, really helpful for holding objectives, because they can deep strike in game, which is great. But yeah, they're the smallest of them. And then you've got the 2 basic troop types here in the petting zoo, the smaller Tyranid troop types, the Hormagaunts, who are the runny, stabby ones, and the termagants.
I hate them.
What do you hate
I've
about
never.
them?
Well, in the game they're really annoying, but I've always found the Tyranids funny. The way their guns look like guns. The range is much better than what it used to be. It just used to annoy me the way they just look like they're holding guns.
Yeah,
Like
you know
I always thought, if you were biologically evolving, you'd evolve something slightly different. You know.
it's weird that they've got the termagants gun things have what looks like a kind of a magazine. You know, it's like a kind of an AK style banana mag sticking out the bottom there.
Yeah, well, it is kind of like a magazine because those are the flesh borers. So inside the magazine it's actually like a hive of what they call the flesh borer beetle. So when they fire it, they're like fleas. So they release them and they jump and burrow through armor and flesh. And some of them explode into flames and some of them scream in this like horrible high-pitched sound as they burrow into you. So that's why they kind of look like that. But I know what you mean. They do look a little bit too much like guns, especially when they're painted in a completely different color, like on the GW art. I don't think that doesn't help. But you will notice that on a lot of the Tyranid shooting stuff, that they've all got little eyes because they all have their like little targeting, like they are a separate kind of entity.
Oh, cool.
If you look closely on all the Tyranid weaponry, there's like a little bit that's supposed to be painted like a little eye.
So it's like a lens.
Yeah.
But what's that? Like, it's got this weird sort of tube coming out the back of it. What's like? So they sort of plumbed in to the termagant, or does the termagant grow its own gun thing?
No, I think they're like connected into it because it's like it is a separate organism. I mean, it's still Tyranid, but it is plugged into them. So
did either of you ever play Soul Calibur?
Yeah,
no.
That fighting game. Do you remember there was that one character, or when you got the sword, Soul Calibur, and it was like a weird sword with like an eye in. And if you played Nightmare, it was just like a big piece of pizza with like an eye on top of it. It's kind of like that's what it reminds me of a little bit.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I know what you mean. And then the big mummer of all of these, then how they breed them at the zoo, I've heard, is they use a Tervagon. Now, you guys have played against my Tervagon for many years, Shelob, who's a bit of a custom version of this. But they're one of my favorite things that you can play in 40K because they literally are continuously giving birth to these Hormagons and Termagons as the game goes on, which is cool. You can't use them at the moment because you have to pay points for things that don't start on the board, but they're one of the cooler models, I think, in the range.
Yeah, they always were very cool, and they've got that weird sort of egg sac with a termagon bursting out of it, kind of thing. But it's very cool.
Which you get loads of when you buy. You know, you can do lots of conversions with this kit, but you just end up with loads of those big egg sacs, and they don't really convert into much else. So you just end up chopping them up and stuff. Okay, so that's some of the cuter, smaller things in the Tyranid range. Let's go back to the map.
Get out of this petting zoo. All right, Matt. So we're back here, looking at the map, see what's going on this beautiful sunny day out here in the Tyrannic Park. What have we got left to go and see? We've got the Psycho Beast, Sky Zone, Horror House, the tunnels of Jormungandr. The tunnels of Jormungandr. Let's go there.
You want to go there? Yeah.
Oh yeah, before
Jormungandr.
Let's go there.
Oh, so we're in the tunnels, guys. So some of the tunneling underground beasties of the Tyranid selection. Have you guys know anything about any of these?
Gyarados.
Explain, Matt. Explain for the listener.
The Morlock looks exactly like a Gyarados, except you never really see them painted like. Get what was Gyarados, like blue and yellow.
Yeah,
kind of like an Ultramarines Tyranid. The Morlock is the thing that comes up from the tunnel and deploys loads of little minials behind its arse. And it can come up from the ground and eat a Lehman Russ, like cause loads of damage. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love. It
always used to scare me.
I love the Morlock. As Matt said, it's a big crawling beast that comes up and just does. Now it does mortal wounds, but before in 7th, it used to be absolutely devastating. You could pop it up with a blast template and kill a whole unit of Terminators, essentially just outright. Yeah. It was models slain. It was fantastic.
That's right. But I forgot about that when you put the blast template, and that's where it popped up from, wasn't
Yeah.
it? From the yeah.
And
And it is a cool model. It's got. I know we've talked about aliens a bit, but this guy's gone the other way. He's got the predator mouth.
Yeah.
And the pincers down the side, like a kind of and an earwig tail. He's a big cool creepy bastard.
Yeah, it is that horrible earwig tail.
Oh man, I'd love to see a black Tyranid army.
Oh, there is
Like
one. So I mean,
black.
we've mentioned Alien already. So that is it. H.R. Geiger.
Yeah, the artist.
The artist.
Yeah.
There is. I don't know the guy's name, but if you Google it, you will find there is somebody who's done a Geiger-inspired Tyranid army that's all in shiny black with bright green, like venom sacs, and it's incredible. It looks amazing.
Well, I think we talked about it ages ago, but if you get a load of those color shift paints and kind of like mix them together on black, it like just a couple of layers each, then you make this weird kind of oil effect, which might go. But I think those paints are quite thick, so you might end up losing some detail or something. But if you're a good painter, better than me, and you've got some color shift paints, you want to fuck around with that might be quite cool.
But that's quite a cool idea, because oil is like the biomass of beings that were alive millions of years ago, and your whole Tyranid army could be like oil, like
I mean, that's it. We're just the Tyranids of our world, consuming the oil.
Yeah.
And all of that, really.
Sucking it up. So there's two of these things that live underground. The Morlock's the one that pops up. Matt, the thing that brings a whole unit with it is the Trigon, which is basically the same kit without the mouth. But then there's these two kits that I think these are my number one GW needs to redo kits. The Red Terror.
What the fuck is that?
Is awful. The Red Terror.
Like a blob with arms on it.
It looks like a Rick and Morty monster.
Yeah, it does actually.
Looks awful, and the Ravener's the same.
I understand why people don't like this model. I've got the Red Terror, that is. I've got a weird soft spot for it, because just for the factors, like if you ever had like a spider in your house and you've been like, okay, I'm cool with this, and it like lives in the corner or something, and it goes out and has adventures, and then every so often it come back and it's more and more fucked up. Like one of its legs is fucked. Yeah. Like, whatever. Half of it's been eaten by another spider or some shit. That's what this fucker looks like. He does look like he's been a bug that's been in a bunch of wars. And I know that means that he looks shit, but I'm just kind of giving him like, carte blanche for looking shit. But, I feel like if you're a named character in the Tyranid army, rather than being big and cool and covered with like purity seals and stuff, you should have one leg that's like bent the other way, and you've had like a bad like skin change or whatever, and like some goo leaking out of you and stuff.
But these guys haven't got a lot of love in the rules, or mentioned much in the lore, or had a model in a long time. So I really hope that come the new codex, these guys get a little bit of love.
What is the Ravener thing? I've never seen that before.
So they're like, the Red Terror is like a giant Ravener basically, and the Raveners, they burrow. So they're like small Morlocks basically, and they can deep strike because they burrow from underground, but they're just not very good on the board, so people don't really play them, and the models look horrible. So
those are truly forgettable models, to be honest with you. I mean, like that's just like a gene stealer and like stuck on a like snake body with like some pincers on. Like, I wouldn't be able to pick that out of a crowd of gene stealers for love nor money.
When you think how cool those Ophidian destroyers, those Necron things with blades and snake tails look in comparison, you see why people don't play those much. But the reason, this word that we're all struggling to say, Jormungandr, is one of the chapters of the Tyranid. So like everything has its version of chapters these days. Tyranid have the hive fleet. So Jormungandr is a hive fleet that burrows underground. And it's often like hollowed out a whole planet like Swiss cheese before anyone even knows it's there. And then they all erupt like Tremors. And you have to go and get what's his face from Tremors to come and help you out.
It's weird. It sounds like some sort of Thai, like, oh, we're going Young Mangdanga.
Well, it does when you say it like that.
Yeah.
But so it's one of the hive fleets that I thought we mentioned. We're not going to go through them all, but the big ones are Leviathan and Behemoth, that you see a lot. The white and purple paint scheme and the blue and red paint scheme. that you see GW use quite a lot, but there are lots of other ones too.
Oh, cool, Matt. So we're back here looking at the map of Tyrannic Park, and there's a few places we still haven't visited. We haven't been to the Psycho Beasts Sky Zone, but I'm going to say maybe we should check out the Horror House.
Yeah.
I'm quite past a bit of horror.
Yeah.
Let's see what's going on down there.
Spooky goings on in the Horror House. Very familiar names to lots of people, I think. Gene Stealers, Lictor, Swarmlords, Venom Storothropes. Where do you want to start?
Oh, let's start in with the Lictor, because as you know, I like this model because I used to have like an old version of this, which I gave to you, Welshie, for your
I certainly do have it.
army. And I used to love the Lictors, and they're sort of like camouflage beasties, aren't they? They're like, well, always used to be like, kind of could hide and masters of deception.
Yeah, they are Predator. And that's their role as well. They call them like a vanguard organism, and they'll often be the only Tyranid on a planet for potentially years, sneaking round. And what they do is they sneak up behind people and drink their brain and read their memories, and then transmit the person's memories back to the hive mind. So they're like scouts, really. They just kind of seed on planets. Hide away. They are the alien within the aliens, essentially. And the big one. Do you guys know what the big version of the Lictor's called? He's got a really cool rule called "It's After Me."
Old One Eye.
No, we'll come across him later.
I don't know.
The Death Leaper.
Oh yeah.
He's like the famous Lictor. And I was reading him. I didn't know that much about him really, other than he's got a cool rule. In his rule with that "It's After Me" at the start of the game, you pick an enemy character and you basically get crazy rerolls against that character, like you're chasing that one character for the whole game, which is cool. But there's this story that there's this planet called St. Caspelen, and there's just one, the Death Leaper's there, and he just, over the period of 5 years, kills like everybody on the planet, apart from the Cardinal, because it realizes that if it kills the Cardinal will be like a martyr, and the Imperials will rally around him and fight back. So he keeps like waiting for the Cardinal to get new bodyguards, and then breaking in and killing all the bodyguards and like sniffing the Cardinal and walking away again over and over again until the Cardinal goes mad and starts like vox casting out his insanity, and the whole world falls to pieces before the Tyranids even get there. Which I think is real kind of cool, creepy horror.
Yeah.
Tyranid on the planet.
Yes, that's very kind of, Gene Stealer Primarchy, where you're just a one single organism just fucking everything up.
Yeah, exactly. And they, like you say, they're completely camouflaged. They're basically invisible, and Predator.
All right, so what else? So in the Horror House, we've also got the cool tentacly Venom Thrope. What can you tell us about him? Because that's a cool model.
Yeah, I really love these models. I can tell you that they're firstly difficult to put in a carry case and take anywhere. If you don't know what the Venom Thrope is, what we're talking about, they're like a floating sack of gas on a tail with loads of tentacles. And their role in game is to pump out spores. And they basically give -1 to hit to things that are around them. But in the lore, they're way better than they are in the game. If you breathe in one spore, it liquefies your entire insides without hurting your skin. And then a Venom Thrope will eventually bob its way over to you and extend like a straw and suck all of your insides out, which is pretty mental. And if melting your insides from breathing spores wasn't enough, all of their tentacles are tipped with poison that makes all of your flesh just fall off. So they can make you fall apart from the outside in or the inside out whilst they're bobbing around, covering the battlefield in smog. Yeah, I really like them. I have many of these guys, and the big one of them is called the Malanthrope. It's a Forge World model. But Matt hates it when I play against the guard and make him hit me on 5s instead of 4s with these guys.
I think I'll be hitting on 6s.
Sometimes, possibly, yeah, if you've moved. But you can move your tanks now, can't you?
No, I think that they only hit on 5s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Blimey. There we are. Okay, so other things in the Horror House then. We've not talked about Gene Stealers properly yet. They are the coolest thing in the entire Tyranid range.
Yeah. They are. I love them. I I never understand why people don't use more of them. I know they're quite expensive in terms of points, but I would, if I had a Tyranid army, I would just have loads of Gene Stealers. They're frightening.
Yeah.
And they've just got better as well in game, haven't they?
They have, yeah. I mean, I've just every now and then I'll go on eBay and buy 10 Gene Stealers for something stupid like £3 or something, some old crappy Gene Stealers, and strip them and paint them. So I think I'm up to about 35 now. So one day I'll unleash them all in a game, but I think they're as iconic to 40k as the Guardsman or the Space Marine once you get
100%.
into it a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think especially if you coming from it from we've all been into it for a while, and sort of 10 years ago, even Space Hulk, all that kind of stuff, Gene Stealers, that the fact that they started off as a separate army is really telling, because it really feels like the Gene Stealers were, like you say, the poster boys, and then the rest of the Tyranid army like kind of is built around them in many ways, because they've been there from the very beginning. Even Gene Stealer cults, that's a whole army based around the idea of Gene Stealers, like everything. So
yeah, I love that. And we've talked about the Gene Stealer cults before and how they work, but if you haven't listened to that episode, the thing that's cool about Gene Stealers is they essentially seed a bit of their Gene Stealer virus, and then every generation that gives birth to that goes from looking human to becoming Gene Stealer. And that's the whole deal with the Gene Stealer cults, is that they go from human, get more and more tyrannidy until they're just pure strain Gene Stealers, and the patriarchs born, and then that's like a homing beacon for the Tyrannids, and they start worshipping the Tyrannids, and then the Tyrannids come and eat them too. And it's an excellent classic parasitic lifestyle, sparked off by these horrible Gene Stealers.
If we're talking about Tyrannids, we've also got to talk about the Swarm Lord. Very versatile model, very versatile character. Can have wings, can not have wings, many arms, guns, all sorts of stuff. So,
yeah, I mean, he is the big bad. He is currently, again, another one that I think could do with his own model, because, like you said there, you think you've seen him with wings. That's because he is the same model as a Hive Tyrant. So you can have a Hive Tyrant with wings, but the Swarm Lord is essentially a named character, but it's the same model. Swarm Lord has to have 4 bone sabers, like that's his deal, and he's essentially the Primarch of the Tyranids on the table and can boss around loads of stuff. But he doesn't have a separate model. He just looks like a Hive Tyrant, which can be equipped with wings or any of the other guns or any of the other close combat weapons. So for something that is nearing 300 points and is basically a staple at the moment of Tyranid lists, he could do with his own model, because he's pretty badass. Yeah. He's a bit like the Emperor's Champion, where he does get defeated. Dante kills him with an axe at some point from the Dante of the Blood Angels, but his consciousness gets consumed and he gets like brought to life wherever the Tyranids need him most. So he is like the Emperor's Champion of the Tyranids.
He's like the Saint Celestine.
Yeah, it's that. Yeah, I guess it's that kind of deal. And he's brutal in combat. And he is like the leader that everyone's terrified of across the Imperium.
Okay, I never realised that Tyranids had so many named characters.
Yeah, you just don't see them played a lot, and a lot of the ones that I've talked about, like the Parasite of Mortrex. The Red Terror has a kind of crappy model. Old One Eye has a kind of crappy model. There's loads, but they just don't have like good models that separate them from everything else. They're just variants on kits that already exist. So that would be nice to see some love given to these characters. The lore kind of gets away with it by saying that the hive mind is just testing. Oh, it's just a test, and if it works well, it'll make loads of them. But that seems like a way of GW just bringing them out in the future. It's quite a good business plan.
Yeah, certainly is.
Okay, so that's the horror house.
The 70s, the 80s,
the 90s.
Oh, we're going back in time. Is that a space squat? It's time we take you back with a blast from the past.
So for this blast from the past, I wanted to talk about a little game called Chainsaw Warrior. Have you guys ever heard of this? This was a single-player board game made by Games Workshop that came out pre Warhammer, pre Rogue Trader, anything like that. You ever heard of it?
What?
No, not heard of it.
Not at all.
Yeah. So it's a single player game where you have 60 minutes to negotiate a labyrinth of abandoned buildings and stuff in New York, and you're a guy that looks suspiciously like a prequel to a Space Marine, and you've got a chainsaw, and you're fighting the Darkness, which is basically like a really early version of Chaos.
Not Justin Timberlake, and not Justin.
No, what's his name?
Justin
Hawkins. Yeah. No, not those guys. I'm talking about the pre-Chaos guys called the Darkness, and some of them had some very Korn-looking logos on them that hadn't been quite done to look like Korn just yet. So what I think is quite interesting about this game, was it a game that basically is the transition between now times and Warhammer 40K, if you see what I mean? Like, was this the war that wasn't talked about? Because there's this big gap in knowledge, isn't there, in Warhammer, where they didn't know, they found like dinosaur bones and thought there was some kind of like weird alien race and all this kind of stuff, where like old history is like completely forgotten. So it's kind of like, it sort of unwrites the idea that it might be set on today's Earth. Somehow there's a link between Warhammer and now. And I think that maybe this game, Chainsaw Warrior, is the bridge that was the initial thing to try to make people think that it was a somehow based in real life.
That Warhammer is set on Earth, on our Earth.
Basically, that there was that at some point, because in Chainsaw Warrior, it's all set in like New York and all this kind of stuff, when the Darkness comes down and invades with zombies and stuff like that. And because the Darkness is not the Darkness that we know today, but the Darkness from 40,000 years in the future, where they're all kind of a bit chaosy. Maybe this is the thing that the seed that grew into Warhammer 40,000, if you see what I mean.
And like coming up with that as a concept. Potentially. That's interesting.
But so when did this come out? So like
1987.
80s?
1987 this game came out. But I was kind of wondering as well, because if we're talking about like games that sort of spawn games that we have today, and there's kind of a good case to say that Warhammer Fantasy, for instance, was kind of spawned off the back of like Tolkien's work and stuff like that. And then obviously they ended up doing, a Lord of the Rings board game. One of the things that I was wondering recently, after having read these Dune books, and like obviously there's a new Dune franchise, like movie-wise, going on, which will probably take, maybe 5 to 7, maybe even 10 years to properly complete its full circle. Do you think, and this is a real curveball, but do you think it's possible that maybe Games Workshop might do like a Dune board game that would be kind of
I've seen
similar.
This already though.
There is a Dune board game.
There is a Dune board game, but it's not like
GW.
But it's not like a one with like loads of miniatures and you put them out like in the same way that you do.
Well, that's what I think I've seen.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's interesting though. To think about whether GW would ever do.
If they
do what it did with Lord of the Rings, like, is there any sci-fi that they would do? Something. Well, I mean, it's clearly influenced by Dune. I don't know enough about Dune, I've got to say, to know whether it would sustain a battle game, but maybe.
I don't think they would now. I don't think they would. I don't think as a company they'd do that now. I think they've established their IP enough that they wouldn't want to mix it with another one, someone else's.
I think it's very
world.
I think that one part of me feels like it's very unlikely, but then we have seen a Marvel comic book come out. Like these things are stuff that would have surprised me 5 or 10 years ago, and I'm just thinking maybe like if this is the first film in a big Dune franchise, and I'm using this as an example because there is obvious things that are pulled from Dune in the 40K. Do we think that they might ever do another kind of a Tolkien-esque board game?
I mean, we've got Amazon doing Lord of the Rings again, haven't we? I wonder if Games Workshop will do, because they still bring out Lord of the Rings miniatures now, so they must maybe that'll give them a bit of a boost to the whole range. Maybe they'll do something new.
Yeah, that would be cool, because that's like a whole that would give them some real breathing space on design and stuff, because that's a kind of whole area, that pre-Silmarillion, like pre-Lord of the Rings, pre-Hobbit era, of the Tolkien verse that people don't really know much about, so they've got a little bit more free range.
Oh, is that what they're doing? I thought Amazon were just remaking the films.
No.
Good.
It's
excellent.
a different time period. It's really
I'm going to
cool.
watch it then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited for it. But one thing that I was thinking, like, is there any franchise that would sustain games in the same way with miniatures that I personally would really enjoy? It would be like a tabletop version of Age of Empires, where
that's a good idea.
Where they make the miniatures like almost like historical miniatures, but with a bit of GW flair. That's more historical than now Age of Sigmar is. But then maybe that's what Old World is going to be, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, Slady. It's a good question. Would they ever do it again? I think I'm kind of at this point with Matt, but I think if I sat down and thought about it, there's definitely stuff I'd like to see them try. That's
it. I do think that it's I bought it up not thinking that this is something that would happen, but at the same time, Lord of the Rings stuff came out of nowhere as well, and even though it's something that does fit their kind of IP, the only reason why I think that the Dune one is relevant is because there is an awful lot of stuff kind of borrowed from Dune, really, that would translate to sort of 40K and stuff, and it's obviously got this huge geeky fan base in the same way that the Lord of the Rings does, that would probably love to try to recreate these battles and scenes from the film and stuff. And if it does turn into a big film franchise, maybe it will happen. One of the things that I was kind of interested in, when did the Lord of the Rings range come out for GW?
Was it on the
third film?
No,
was it on the first film? Okay,
yeah.
All right, fair play.
There was a really interesting interview with Rick Priestley that I watched sometime this year, fairly recently. And he goes into his like, he tried to suggest to everyone at Games Workshop that they just started making the Fellowship of the Ring, and that Games Workshop should see it as an opportunity to bring in a new model range. He was saying essentially everything we've just said. They would fit perfectly Games Workshop. If Games Workshop didn't do it, somebody else would, and Games Workshop's a perfect company to bring out miniatures to do with Lord of the Rings. And there was, even back then, so this is like 1999 when they start getting the budget for the first film, there were lots of people at Games Workshop that didn't really like the idea of doing it, but essentially Games Workshop made an enormous amount of money by getting in on the act of the Lord of the Rings, because they were massive films. And they did really, really well by making those figures and selling those figures.
I mean,
there were people that didn't want to do it. I stopped
playing 3rd edition 40K Orcs and played only Lord of the Rings Warhammer for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Because
those models at the time it was like everyone had seen the Games Workshop stuff, but to see something that like redesigned, like to be able to own a physical model of the Witch King or that Grog or something like that
amazing.
Was really crazy. Yeah.
And the faces, I mean, at a time when faces weren't great, you could tell
they looked like the actors.
They looked like the actors on a scale that was smaller than 28 mil.
Yeah. So they at Games Workshop got in on the act while they were making the first film. And what's he called? He's into wargaming and stuff, the director. Peter Jackson and everyone, they were on board with it. Just another marketing opportunity.
So maybe you're saying that if we haven't seen Dune models yet, we might not.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But yeah, I think there's definitely space for it in the future.
Yeah, keep your eyes peeled, Dune fans.
Well, looks like we found our way back to the map, boys. We've got left to choose from Psyker Beasts, some kind of lightning firing over there in the distance I can see, the Sky Zone, the Horror House, or the Carnifex feeding show. Where do you fancy?
Well, my psychic ability is predicting the near future, boys, and it's telling me that we need to go to the Psyker Beasts. So let's go there now.
So, boys, this is the Psyker Beasts area. Some of my favourite models within the Tyranid range. Where do you want to start?
Oh, well, I mean, we couldn't.
Oh, man.
If we're doing Psyker Beasts of the Tyranids, we can't not start at the Zoanthrope. We are in the zoo. and this is a zoanthrope. So let's check it out.
Well, you guys know I love running these in my army list. If you haven't seen these, I think they are one of. I've said this. I'm sure I've said this with every model that we've talked about, but they are possibly my favorite model. They are so weird. They don't look like anything else. They don't look like aliens from Alien. They don't look like, just insects running around. They have a complete own personality, and they're basically just a brain with a tail. And their whole deal is that they're just super crazy psychers. But it's really interesting because they don't have access to the warp. So we've talked about the shadow and the warp. They can't go through the warp. Their psychers don't use the warp. So the zoanthropes aren't really psychers. What they do is channel the power of the hive mind. So it's a completely different thing. They're not using the same energy as any of the other races in 40K, which is interesting.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's not the warp. So I don't know how they work, and I couldn't find out how they work. It's just pure energy of whatever the hive mind actually is that they can channel and build up in their big bobbing brains, either into just power or to kind of channel power into other tyrannid monsters. And their big boss is the neurothrope, which can heal them. Do you think? I mean, what do you? I think they just don't look like anything else. I mean, perhaps I'm wrong.
Yeah. No, they are the most unique, I think, out of the whole range.
It's just something that's been completely designed from scratch, which I love. So yeah, they are the most powerful, and there's not much more to say to them about that, other than sometimes their brains explode because they can't handle their own energies, and when they get into big groups, they can kind of power each other up. But yeah, it's really weird that it's not expanded upon really in the codex or anywhere as to what actually are they doing, because it's not the warp.
It's this kind of weird how sometimes there's these just weird kind of tropes in kind of alien invasions and stuff, and you've got the big beefy ones, and then you've also got the ones with the tiny little Tyrannosaurus Rex arms and the big bulging brains on top, So,
Mars Attacks. That's the only thing I can think of that this
yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, it's cool. It is a cool, unique model, and they do the job on the battlefield. They get the job done.
Yeah, what I think is particularly cool is the Malanthrope, because you never see them because they're almost impossible to buy and they cost a fortune. And they're these big, bigger than a Carnifex, walking brains on legs. And they've got some really cool lore that I didn't know about until today myself, actually. They have they call them pseudopod tendrils. So how jellyfish work, where if you brush up against the pseudopods, the tentacles of the jellyfish, they fire the little injections into you, and that's what causes the rash of the jellyfish. Well, these things have got brain versions of that just they fill you instantly with so much hive mind power that your head explodes in what they call in the codex an eruption of blood and cerebral matter. So if you walk near one, you just get spiked by a tentacle and your head explodes, which is horrible.
And you say that they're hard to buy, these models, are they?
Yeah, I mean, they certainly were for a while.
Why?
There's a number of things in the Tyranid range that you just can't get. The flyers as well, really difficult to get hold of.
You can't buy them off the Games Workshop website.
No. I mean, I think you might be able to get these now, but they're something like £45 for one, and they're no bigger than a hive tyrant, really.
I saw a really cool conversion someone had done of these recently, where they'd mixed this kit with who's the main bad guy in Age of Sigmar? Is it Agron? No, not Agron. It's someone like that, the main
Archeon,
that's him. Yeah, where someone had taken that kit where it's crazy flying dragon thingies on.
Yeah.
And mixed it with this kit.
I've seen that with the triple tail. It's raising up off the triple tail.
Looks sick as shit. Yeah.
They're really cool. I'd really quite like one, to be honest. And on the battlefield, again, not many people see them because they just seem to be difficult to get hold of, but they can be quite devastating in the game as well. So I really like these, the Malceptors. Really cool. And then there's one more Psyker then that is a fantastic model, and as Gene Stealer Cult, you can basically play the same model. That's the Broodlord. Matt, you watch Angels of Death. What did you think of the Broodlord / Patriarch in Angels of Death last week?
No, it wasn't as cool as I thought it was going to be.
Really?
Yeah, you didn't really see it much. Although I liked when it like smacked the Space Marine across the room.
Yeah. Did you like it when he went into the Black Rage and the shadow behind the Patriarch was Horus? Did you see that?
Yeah, it was amazing. Oh, Sanguinius.
Yeah.
What?
Really
No, I saw Sanguinius. You mean?
Oh, if you watch it back, so the Stoney, this is the Blood Angels.
Why would Horus be there?
They fought their way to the top of the tower, and one of them gets the Black Rage and starts fighting the Patriarch, and he sprouts wings. But if you watch it back, Matt, you see a bit through his eyes, and instead of seeing the Patriarch or the Broodlord, he sees the shadow of Horus like around the back, because he's imagining himself being Sanguinius.
Yeah,
it's really
that
cool.
makes sense. Oh, I'm going to watch that again.
If you haven't watched Angels of Death, get on it, people. But the Broodlord, back to the Broodlord. He's a cool giant Gene Stealer.
It's a great model. This is the only, apart from the Gene Stealers, this is the only model I have from the Gene Stealer range.
It's just the way he's so creepy and leaning over stuff. It's great position. But again, another cool psyker. Not quite as psyker heavy as the other ones, but I thought he fit best in this part of the zoo. He needs some psychic dampening to keep him in check. Well, it looks like we've only got the Sky Zone and the Carnifex feeding show left. I reckon we should save the Carnifex feeding show to last.
Let's go to the Sky Zone.
Blast off, baby. Blast off to the skies.
All right, so Sky Zone, loads of stuff here that you very rarely see. Anything you want to know more about here in the Sky Zone? Got gargoyles, harridans, harpies, hive crones, sporocysts.
The harridan is the Forge World guy, right? With the big bony head.
Yeah.
And he's quite big, isn't he, as
massive.
well?
Yeah, massive, big model. Really, really heavy. And actually, I put him on. He's the only Forge World model I actually put a picture of on the thing that we look at while we record this, because he actually was in a GT winning list a little while ago. Seems the only way you can win a GT with Tyranids is with a I think £700 model, something like that. It is
£700. Is it that?
Maybe it's not that much. I might be lying.
I thought it was just like a flyer. Like
no, I mean it's massive. It's it's way more than that. I'll look it up live on here. But yeah, so it's like a beautiful model.
So it's like an Imperial Knight kind of.
Oh, it's bigger than a Knight.
Oh, right.
It's Titan size.
So what is I know we're in the Sky Zone and all, but what is the name of that big Titan that you can get for Tyranids? The Forge
World? Thing with the long legs.
Yeah, the like
massive
skinny
thing.
Yeah,
skinny
the Hierophant.
That's it.
Hierophant Titan. Yeah, it looks like a giant shrimp with legs.
Yeah,
we couldn't actually fit him in the zoo because he's bigger than the zoo itself. But it is, I think it's cool. I think it's actually cooler than most of the other Tyranids that you get from Forge World, because I don't think the other big Tyranids from Forge World look like the rest of the range. Like we're looking at the Harridan against the other flyers, and I don't think they just don't fit in very well.
Yeah, no, it does look a bit bizarre compared to the rest, but it is still a cool model. It's kind of half
£300.
dragon.
£300.
Oh, £300. That's still a lot of money, but it's still like it's kind of like a dragon more than a Tyranid in some ways.
Yeah,
I think it's because all of the Tyranids, all of the chitin, they've got this exoskeleton, this chitin, this kind of armor plating is all really smooth on the current range. And what they've done in the resin is they've pockmarked it and streaked it and made it really detailed. And I think it means it just doesn't fit in with the other models you have. I mean, I can't do my color scheme on that, which is like shellac, shiny varnish with metal bits, because it just wouldn't be a smooth, shiny shellac beetle look unless I filled in all the holes. But yeah, so that's the Harridan. It's big. It's basically a Lord of War on steroids. It's 300 pounds of resin. God knows how that tiny little base holds it up. It must weigh an absolute ton.
Yeah.
But there are some smaller models in the Tyranid Flyer range. Have you guys ever played or seen any of these in real life? Because they don't get used very much.
Yeah, the gargoyle. Nick used to use them.
Mm-hmm. So they're the smallest ones. They're like the flying troops choice. They're basically termagants with wings. So
they're a troops choice.
Squidgy. No, I think they're fast attack, but they
are basically
fulfill the
troops.
same role. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
The floating ball sacks.
the mucilid spores.
What are they called? The mucilid spores. They're
Mucilid
the ones
spores.
that kind of float around at random and just explode, are they? Are
Yeah,
those
they
things?
kind of run towards things that get too close and then explode. It's kind of like a minefield. So they come out of that sporocyst. So I've got that space egg, which is like the tyrannid transport, the tyrannocyte. From the tyrannid tyrannocyte, which is like a drop pod, you can also build this kit called the sporocyst, which is like a giant ball sack that floats to the ground and burrows into the ground and just pumps out spores from the top of it. So you can't transport in that thing. It just kind of lands on a planet and fires spores out of it. And all of the descriptions in the Codex are all really gross because it's all orifices. So it's like the sporocysts are squeezed out of the orifice from the hive ship, and then they burrow deep into the ground, and then the mucilid spores are squeezed out of the orifice on the sporocyst, and then the sporocyst squeezes out more from its orifice. Just all orifice based, guys, with tyrannids. And it makes like a minefield essentially with these little exploding bombs. And it can also, in lore wise, it releases microbes that start, as with everything, breaking down the planet into goo so it can be sucked up in the giant straws to the hive fleet. But it's a really weird model, that sporocyst model, the big kind of lumpy thing. I think it's horrible.
It is odd. It kind of makes more sense now you say that it's going to bury itself down into the ground and be like a kind of a cannon, because it's got those weird kind of octopus mouth around the outside, which I never really got. But if it's supposed to be like, it goes into the ground and they're the kind of like, the thing that stops it sinking too far or whatever, then it kind of makes more sense to me. But yeah, very strange model.
And then the kind of flying dragons, then the harpies and the hive crones. Again, you can't get these on the Games Workshop website. You can't buy these flyers for Tyranids. So maybe these are going to get a revamp. They look kind of weird. They don't look very scary or agile or anything.
They suffer a bit from the what was it, the Rippers or some Raveners we were just talking about, where it's kind of like just a big tyrannid with wings stuck on it, like kind of rather than having too much of its own personality. Yeah.
The hive crone has a cool thing, that the things under its wings, it's got these little they're called tentaclids. So they're like little separate beasts that sit on its wings, like those things that clean sharks. And they have bioelectric pulses, and they grab onto flyers and they do like a bioelectric pulse and shut down the flyers' electrics. They're like haywire guns. So that's like the Tyranid haywire gun for anti-vehicle stuff. But yeah, you can't buy them even if you wanted them. And I don't think many people do, because as you say, it is just half of another kit with some wings attached to it, which you could convert yourself anyway. So maybe that's why I don't sell them.
All right, well, hopefully they'll get an update at some stage. Doesn't cost 300 quid to run a Tyranid flyer anymore.
Well, we've done it right, boys. We've moved from the back of the park all the way back to the Carnifex feeding show, right on time for a gore fest, I'm sure. Well, we're here at the Carnifex feeding show, and it looks like they've got a variety of things on offer, from Screamer Killers to Thornbacks, some of the oldest models and relics from the past of 40K. Do you guys know any different types of Carnifex? What do you know about them while he's feeding it?
The distraction Carnifex.
The distraction Carnifex. Tell us more.
That's where in the game you have a Carnifex and you big it up to be the most frightening, scariest thing. They have a reputation that at the moment is not really well founded, as far as I'm led to believe. So the distraction Carnifex is the Carnifex you run up the board to frighten your opponent, and actually they're not that great. They'll soak up a lot of firepower though.
Yeah, I mean that is it. In 7th, the distraction Carnifex was drop pod a Carnifex into the back lines and rip open the back of a tank. When tanks had armor that was different at the back, and it was really, really scary. Is the picture that we've got up here? It's a classic picture from the Codex, and I think it was one of the pictures in the Battle from a Crag box set of the Carnifex, like 3 times bigger than a rhino, flipping the rhino and ripping it to pieces. It's the image that got me into Tyranids in the first place, because I just thought, God, that thing looks powerful. And then you get a Carnifex, and it's kind of stumpy and weird looking, and like you say, Matt, not as great in the lore as it is now, but they do come in different varieties. You've got the Screamer Killer Carnifex. That was like the first one in the lore that screeches as it runs in, and you've got Thornbacks that fire thorny missiles, and you can even get like separate weapons from Forge World to stick on a Carnifex, the Stone Crusher claws, and there's one with these like massive testicle arms that like bashes stuff. I can't remember what it's called, but we'd be remiss not talking, Stoney, about your favorite Tyranid model down there on the bottom left, the original metal Carnifex.
The old school metal Carnifex. Yeah, I mean, it's very different. The model has changed dramatically in the time since then. He was up on 2 legs with a bunch of arms, and now he's more bug-like, more in keeping maybe. Who could say? I don't know.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And they're in the middle there, Old One Eye. And this is what I'm talking about. He is my number 1 pick for a new kit. That Carnifex that you guys are looking at, that is the same kit as the Carnifex. The only difference is he's got 1 eye. That is the model for Old One Eye. A beast that has hunted through the wastelands of Ultramar for millennia. The same kit as everything else.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's kind of difficult, isn't it? Because he is just supposed to be a Carnifex that got his eye blown out, really, isn't he? I mean, yeah, I get it that he does need to be a cooler kit, but it's kind of, how do you do it? This is what I'm saying about the Red Terror kit.
Dynamic pose.
Yeah, definitely something like, I mean, I'm sure that they'll do a much better job of it when they redo them eventually. But like, again, a bit for me, like I was saying from the Red Terror thing, I want him to be like proper fucked up. Like the tips of his pincers are all fucked up, and like, he's seen way too much war, and carapace or whatever has been all like pitted up or something. So a lot more battle damage.
It's difficult to give personality, I think. I was thinking this when I was reading through, trying to put like this episode together for today. It's really hard compared to when we've done other factions because they don't speak. They don't have lore. They don't have history. Everything that's written about them is from the perspective of somebody else. And it's hard to give character to something that is essentially just a monster.
Yeah.
And I think, hopefully now with better modeling, that they might be able to achieve that with some of the, like you said earlier, that you didn't know there were so many characters. Maybe now we can get some more characterfulness to some of these monsters, like we see in some of the Age of Sigmar stuff.
Yeah. Maybe pose him so he's flipping over a rhino like this guy in the picture that you
or like just size him up a bit, just like, he's a bit brutal, he's grown a bit over the years,
Yeah.
So that probably concludes our zoo time, guys. I think we've gone through the majority. There's more that we could have fit in, but we're not going to fit it in today. Maybe we should give old Cryptman a ring.
Oh yeah, okay. I better I'll get on the blower and give Cryptman a call.
Well, what did you think? Was it the site of scientific interest, or is it a threat to the Imperium? Spit it out, won't you?
Excellent hot dogs. We had a great day. Candy floss. It's been fun. We had a good time. If your tickets, if you still want to come tomorrow, then we'll be up for another round.
Well, then you truly are heretical pricks. I'm sending a small force to destroy it, and you along with it. I hope there's no one there that might help you save it.
Well, boys, I've hacked into Cryptman's Voxcast, and it seems like he's definitely sending some Militarum Tempestus, a few large squads with hotshot lasguns, and some Tauroxes, maybe even some heavy armor. How are we going to fight this back? Maybe we can pick 5 or so and release them.
We've got to have Old One Eye.
Okay, so he's an HQ choice, so he's leading the pack, is he? So I've heard Cryptman send in a small force of Militarum Tempestus. So it's going to be some troops, it's going to be a couple of tanks maybe. We've got Old One Eye on board. What else have you learned today that you think might be useful?
What's that massive £300 Forge World kit? That would take out some of the tanks and some of the flyers.
That's not available. Not available.
What?
There's only one. It's in a breeding program. You can't have it.
Oh, we've just been to see it. It was in the Sky Zone. Release it from the Sky Zone. What about
Gene Stealers? Got to have some Gene Stealers, haven't we?
Okay, so we've got Old One Eye, some Gene Stealers you're letting out.
I hope they don't come for us. We gave you a good TripAdvisor review.
What about the tunneling guy? That fella.
Oh yeah, the the
Red Terror.
Trigon.
Red
Oh,
Terror,
The Morlock.
the Trigon, the Morlock,
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Take him.
Gyarados.
Take Gyarados, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Psychic Brain Man.
Oh yeah, Zoanthrope.
Take him.
Do we need more troops? We got Gene Stealers, but we could do with maybe some of the basic Hormagaunts. The ones with the guns.
No. Why waste our time on Hormagaunts? You know, we ain't got a points cost. We don't need, that kind of thing. Let's just bring more Gene Stealers if we need more troops.
All right, yeah.
So you got a shitload of Gene Stealers. You got a Morlock coming up from the ground. You got old One Eye charging in from the front. You can have 2 more things.
I mean, the little bugs that fly, they're only flying troops, but I reckon they might be quite useful. Distracting, and maybe a Broodlord to go with the Gene Stealers.
What about we get a
big tank killing thing?
What about we get a digestion pool, because we're going to need somewhere to dump all this delicious energy. And then what was the guy with the big brains and all the tentacles? The other the
Malanthrope.
Yeah. He's
that's
a hard model.
Sorry, that's my fault. That is a Malceptor.
Oh, a Malceptor. Okay, let's get the Malceptor.
Okay. Well,
it's like the white rhino of the zoological world.
Right, you little cunts, you're coming with me.
And so the great battle for Jurassic Park begun. Captain Crickman's forces fought valiantly, but they were no match for the outstanding powers of the Tyranid forces. Their bodies were rendered and cast asunder by some of the galaxy's most feared and devastated creatures. Looks like the Large Blast podcast boys got out by the whiskers on their ass.
Yeah, we did it, guys. High five. Oh, hang on a second. The phone's ringing. Probably nothing. Let me just see who's here. Hello, Stoney speaking.
You think I care about the lives of some bloody Militarum Tempestus scions? That was just a test to prove that you are as heretical as everybody says you are. Exterminatus incoming.
Bring it on, bitch. We know that your powers have been snipped by the Imperium. You exterminatus too many planets, didn't you? Well, fuck it. We're ready for you. We're king of the Tyranids now. The heretical Large Blast podcast rises victorious again.
And just like that, the Large Blast podcast boys were all destroyed in an exterminatus. Or would you believe it? Sometimes that's just the way things turn out. Hopefully we'll be back next week with our Christmas episode, so stay tuned for that. Sorry there's no random topic or Lords of Law this week, but maybe we could do a quick one now. Maybe we'll just do a quick one. You and me, yeah? So Lords of Law this week. What number am I thinking of? Okay, listener at home, go. What do you think? If you guessed 69,420, then you've won a prize. Here you go. I'll give you the prize noise. Boom. There you go. That's a bit like what it's like being on the show. Anyway, we'll catch you next time. Bye.